Retail employees of Reddit, what are your Black Friday horror stories? Back in my poor college days when I worked at Walmart, we had a fight break out over a bike. Fists were thrown and there was some blood. Eventually, one guy got a hold of it and managed to get away from the crowd. He rode the bike out of the store to flee his pursuers without paying. I've thrown one punch in my life. It was on Black Friday, so it was the year the 360 came out. I was standing in line to get some external hard drive next to the video games, and there was this 11-ish-year-old kid with a woman in her 60s. He was waiting for his 360 bundle. Woman before him had gotten the last one, size all around. Then he says, "Nope, one more," and begins the motion of handing it to the kid. And this guy comes out of nowhere and pushed the older woman and the kid. The kid hit his face on the edge of a video game rack. You know, the one with metal and plastic dividers. At 19 years old, I didn't know what came over me, but I instantly swung for the dude's head and caught him right in the temple, sending him into a Keurig tower in the middle of the aisle. Everyone froze, including me. Guy had dropped the 360 and got up and walked away. I slid it with my foot to the kid, and he didn't say anything either. Best part was, as I still wanted the hard drive, I turned to get back in the end of the line. At the same time, the rep in charge of handing out the other items, such as the hard drive, asked who was next. The first two people in line just pointed at me, causing me to skip about 5 spots in line. I work back of house at Toys R Us. I spent Black Friday taking big ticket items to the back where we just loaded them into the customer's car, instead of trying to make our way to the front of the store. Apparently, someone decided it was fine to wander to the back storage room and start opening boxes to find what they needed. Other customers saw this one jackbutt do it, and then decided it was okay if they did it too. Me and the other back-of-house guys were busy wrestling with a really obnoxious bed set, so when I made it to the other side of our back storage, I found like 8 to 10 people just taking cases off our bays and opening them, then tossing them aside as if they didn't want it. They claimed there was nothing indicating that they couldn't come back there. We have 2 signs on the swinging door saying, "Employees only," and, "Warning, only authorized personnel beyond this point." Worked security at Target for 5 years. For being a store in the rougher part of town, I don't have too many horror stories. The funniest one I like to tell is a couple of years ago. I was there early doing crowd control. I would always talk to people in line, try to keep them entertained while we waited in the cold. The first couple in line had been there for about 13 to 14 hours. So we opened the store, and we have deals on all sorts of electronics, toys, etc. They get in line and have a shopping cart full of towels that we had on sale for $2. That's it, just towels. They were first in line outside and waited over half a day for $2 towels. When I left after my 12-hour shift, we still had shelves full of these towels, along with tons more in the stockroom. I worked at Radio Shack for a year in college. During Black Friday, one of the sale items was a $10 calculator marked down to $5. 2 sweet elderly women came into the store looking for them. When I told them there was only one left in the display, the crap was on. It turned into a geriatric version of roller derby without the skates. The one grandma who lost the race called the other one a fricking chib as she was standing in the checkout line, gripping her $5 prize. I always imagined some little kid opening presents on Christmas morning and getting this stupid $5 calculator, not really wanting it, and having no clue about the backstory behind it, as his grandma, sipping her tea, looks on with a triumphant gleam in her eye. I think it was around Black Friday 2004, and I was a cart pusher at a Walmart. In this particular year, Walmart offered a plasma TV at an extremely low price, and it was the hottest deal of the year. A man showed up the Tuesday before a big sale with a tent, ice coolers, generator, TV, and everything he needed to brave the 3 nights he would be staying over. He continuously talked about being first in line, and how he was going to get the plasma TV, and how he was hosting the next Super Bowl party, so this was just going to be the best thing ever. Come around Thursday night, I showed up to my shift, and he was still there in a jolly mood, thankful he was about to be able to go home and sleep in his own bed. The news came, and he did a short interview and explained what he was waiting for, how he was able to get the time off. He was a truck driver, and was overall excited over the whole ordeal and prided himself for toughing out the cold. The line for the entrance wrapped around the whole front of the door and about another 300 yards or so past the store, with thousands of people waiting to get in. At 5 a.m., the doors opened and the man goes straight to the plasma TVs to see that they were all gone. What happened? The garden center at Walmart opened up about 10 seconds before the front doors, and those that came the night before scooped up all 15 plasma TVs. This guy, who had been there since Tuesday afternoon, was dumbfounded and argued with management, but was stonewalled and told there was nothing that could be done. That guy's Thanksgiving was a bust for sure. Walmart story time. A couple years ago when the sale started, there was a surge of people trying to get their stuff. One lady got knocked down and her pen went straight into her neck, thankfully missing the jugular. The fricked up part is that no one tried to help, they just walked over her to get their crappy deal items. An associate that saw it happen had to stand over top of her to protect her from getting trampled. When the ambulance crew arrived, they had to literally shove people out of the way because no one would move. People suck. I haven't told this story in a while, so I worked for Miss Fields Cookies in my local mall during Black Friday back when I was in high school. Our manager got called to a store in a different city because a manager had very severely hurt themselves melting chocolate for their chocolate-dipped cookies. I end up having to work for the majority of the day with an equally lazy buddy of mine slinging cookies and taking orders for cookie cakes while the mall was packed. Around 4 in the afternoon, and about $1,600 in sales, a gentleman in a button-down Miss Fields Cookies shirt comes over to our counter telling us he had to do a midday drop for us for whatever money we had taken in that day. I let him in the back, he tinkers for a second on the computer, and ends up taking our deposits. So now it's an hour before close time. My boss is now back to our location to help us close. He starts going through our paperwork and money and realizes we are about $1,600 short. I explained to him that Mr. So-and-so came down to our location to do a midday drop since he didn't work. He told me Mr. So-and-so doesn't exist and calls the corporate office. It turned out this guy had gone to over a dozen Miss Fields in the area and robbed over $10K worth of money. They never figured out who it was. I ended up being fired over it with my buddy. We stole a giant cookie cake as compensation. Worth it. I was a GameStop worker when the Wii came out. The second we unlocked the doors, crap was a riot. People were fighting one another, swearing, crying, just about everything. People were so desperate. When people managed to get one, somebody would throw the other person to the ground and buy it. My first Black Friday, I was working at a Walmart. I was assigned to be one of the employees that would cut open the plastic on the pallets, which contained our merchandise, which were all on the floor. Basically, as I readied a box cutter, I got shoved by a customer and fell right on it and sliced my hand open. After getting through that and patching it up, I came out on the floor and promptly got punched in the face when I picked up a DVD on the ground. A customer apparently wanted it. Frick Black Friday. I was working a register at Circuit City, was typically customer service, but there was no chance we were returning anything on Black Friday, and there were plenty of managers on hand for upset customers. And apparently some idiot ran into a transformer nearby and took out the power to the whole retail block. Everyone who had items they wanted to purchase, several hundred people, had to just sit down and chill out for around an hour and a half while we waited for the power to return. The funny part to me was how many people asked me, often in a very pissy, exasperated tone, "When's the power coming back on?" Mind you, I was working at an isolated register, hadn't left or been visited by any other employees as I was surrounded by customers, and the people asking had been standing/sitting next to me the entire time. I understand I was wearing a uniform, but come on people, muster up a little common sense. Also, I had a bin beneath my counter where I kept things that people had decided they didn't want to buy. One of the hot items that year was a USB thumb drive for like $5. I had someone spot a few in my bin and asked if they could have them, so I looked down to grab a couple and came back up to around 10 hands stretched out. I was really worried there was going to be an issue over who asked first. I just said, "Sorry, but someone's going to be upset no matter what I do," and quickly shoved the drives into random hands. Luckily, no one gave me a hard time or fought with each other. I am very glad I don't have to work that 4 a.m. to midnight shift ever again, and I have nothing but sympathy and respect for all of you still working in the trenches of retail. Stay safe out there. Back when I worked retail, we had people lining up at the doors. We hadn't finished setting up the signs yet, so we were running late. At about a minute after 12, the people outside started pushing on the door and cursing at my manager. The door was a cheap piece of crap, so even though it was locked, they were able to push it inward. Problem was, it never actually opened, but the people at the back of the crowd thought it did, so they started pushing and the people at the front started being crushed against the door. When my manager saw this, she immediately opened it up and about 5 people at the front spilled onto the floor, and the rest of the people behind them started trampling over them. They were okay though, because they were all young guys, and I saw them shopping a few minutes later. Never worked retail, but I delivered to a lot of retail stores. I'm a trucker. Showed up with a delivery at Wally World about 8 a.m. on Black Friday and couldn't even back into the dock. It's like my rig is giving off an aroma that attracts fat, dumpy people. Turns out they had some ridiculous price on flat screen TVs and had run out. The store manager had told them there were more coming on the next truck that morning, so naturally, they saw me and thought they'd be allowed to just grab them off the truck. Man, were they disappointed when they saw I had a trailer full of brand new shopping carts.